You learned early that love was a transaction, not in some abstract philosophical way, but in the grinding, daily mathematics of survival. Every hug from your mother cost you 2 hours of listening to her marriage problems. Every moment of pride from your father required you to achieve something that made him look good to his friends. You became fluent in this economy before you learned long division, calculating exactly how much of yourself you needed to sacrifice to earn the bare minimum of parental attention. They called you mature for your age, and you wore it like armor. What else could you do? When you're 7 years old, and your mother is sobbing on your shoulder about how daddy doesn't love her anymore, you don't get to be a child. You become whatever she needs: therapist, best friend, partner, parent. You learn to swallow your own tears because hers are always bigger. You learn to make yourself small, convenient, useful. You learn that your worth is directly proportional to how much pain you can absorb from others.
The thing is, you got scary good at it. By age 9, you could talk your father down from his rages better than any adult. You knew exactly when to crack a joke to diffuse tension, when to disappear upstairs, when to suggest ordering pizza so mom wouldn't have to cook and risk another fight about domestic labor. You became a tiny emotional ninja, reading micro-expressions like your life depended on it, because it did. That slight twitch in Dad's jaw meant you had 30 seconds to redirect before explosion. That particular quality of Mom's silence meant she was entering the darkness again, and you'd spend the next 3 days pulling her back from the edge. Maybe you were the glass child, the invisible one with a sibling who sucked all the oxygen from every room. Your brother's autism, your sister's leukemia, your twin's addiction. Whatever crisis dominated your household, you learned to be the one who never needed anything. You perfected the art of being fine. Straight A's weren't achievements. They were apologies for existing. Every soccer game your parents missed, every school play they forgot, every birthday that got overshadowed by another emergency. You swallowed it all with a smile. Because how could your problems matter when your sibling was having seizures? How could you ask for attention when your parents were already drowning? You became a ghost in your own home, and everyone was grateful for it. The helpers found you eventually. That teacher who kept you after class just to check in. The friend's mom who always made extra food and never asked why you were at their house during dinner time. The school counselor who saw through your perfect grades to the exhaustion underneath. You collected these scraps of care like a starving animal, never able to ask for more, terrified they'd realize how much you needed and withdraw like everyone else. But here's what nobody talks about: the sick comfort in the dysfunction. You knew exactly who you were in that chaos: the fixer, the savior, the reliable one. The identity was crushing, but it was yours. Every time Mom called you my rock, or Dad said, "I don't know what I'd do without you," you felt simultaneously proud and hollow. Like you were slowly disappearing, but at least you mattered in your dissolution. The real mind bender comes later, when you're an adult trying to have normal relationships and you can't figure out why everything feels wrong. You pick partners who need saving because broken people feel like home. You stay up until 3 a.m. talking friends through crises that aren't yours to solve. You volunteer for everything, say yes to everything, give until you're empty, and then give some more. Because somewhere, deep in your bones, you still believe that love is something you earn through service. Your body keeps score in ways you don't even recognize. That chronic tension in your shoulders? That's from 2 decades of bracing for impact. The way your stomach drops when someone says, "We need to talk"? That's your 9-year-old self preparing to manage another adult emotional crisis. You can't relax even when everything's fine, especially when everything's fine, because calm always preceded storms in your house. Peace feels like a trick, like the universe is setting you up for a sucker punch. The perfectionism is eating you alive. Not the cute kind where you color coordinate your closet, but the kind where making a small mistake feels like death. Where disappointing someone triggers a primal panic that makes no logical sense. You apologize constantly for existing, for taking up space, for having needs. You scan every conversation for signs you've failed someone. You lie awake replaying interactions, searching for evidence that you're still not enough, will never be enough, no matter how much you give. At work, you're everyone's go-to person. You can't say no without feeling like you're dying inside. You take on extra projects, cover for incompetent colleagues, work yourself into the ground because that's what you do. You handle things. Your boss loves how reliable you are. What they don't know is that you're reliable because the alternative feels like abandonment, like the withdrawal of love that was always conditional anyway. In relationships, you're either consumed or distant. There's no middle ground. Either you're merged with your partner, managing their emotions, anticipating their needs, losing yourself in their desires, or you're behind walls so thick that intimacy becomes impossible. You've never learned how to be separate and connected simultaneously. How could you? Your survival depended on either total enmeshment or complete dissociation. The anger, when it finally comes, surprises you with its ferocity. All those years of swallowing your own needs, of being understanding, of making excuses for everyone, it turns into rage that feels volcanic. But you don't know how to express it cleanly. It comes out sideways, in passive aggression, in sudden explosions over small things, in a bitterness that scares you. You're angry at your parents, but also at yourself for still craving their approval. You're furious at your siblings for never seeing what you sacrificed, but also guilty for resenting them. The anger has nowhere to go that feels safe. Here's what's particularly messed up. When you try to set boundaries, people act like you've betrayed them. Your mother cries about how cold you've become. Your father accuses you of selfishness. Your siblings can't understand why you're suddenly making such a big deal about things. They preferred the old you, the one who never complained, never asked for anything, never said no. And part of you prefers that version too, because at least you knew the rules. At least you belonged somewhere, even if belonging meant disappearing. The healing is messier than any Instagram quote prepares you for. It's not about forgiveness or gratitude or finding the silver lining. It's about admitting that what happened to you was theft. Your childhood was stolen, piece by piece, to feed the dysfunction around you. You were cannibalized by people who were supposed to protect you. And they probably loved you in their broken way, which makes it worse. It would be easier if they were monsters, but they were just damaged people who made you responsible for their damage. Learning to parent yourself feels like trying to fill a canyon with a teaspoon. How do you give yourself what you never received? How do you comfort the parts of you that learned comfort was dangerous? You start small, talking to yourself the way you'd talk to a friend, celebrating tiny victories that no one else notices, buying yourself flowers, taking sick days when you're actually sick instead of pushing through. Revolutionary acts for someone who was trained to exist only in service to others. The boundary setting is brutal. Every time you say no, your body revolts. Your heart races, your hands shake. That familiar voice whispers that you're being selfish, difficult, abandoning people who need you. But here's the truth that took you decades to learn. Their need doesn't constitute your emergency. Their disappointment won't kill them. Their anger isn't your responsibility to manage. You are not required to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. You start recognizing your people, the other walking wounded, who learned too young that love meant sacrifice. You spot them in the helpers, the chronic volunteers, the ones who apologize for crying, who insist they're fine when they're drowning. You see the exhaustion beneath their competence, the hunger beneath their giving. Sometimes you can offer them what you needed: permission to be human, to be messy, to need without earning. The work is slow and non-linear. You'll have weeks where you feel like you've finally figured it out. Then something triggers you and you're 8 years old again, desperate to fix everything. Your mother calls with another crisis, and you feel your boundaries dissolve like sugar in rain. But each time, you come back to yourself a little faster. You remember that you're not responsible for emotions that aren't yours. You practice disappointing people and surviving it. Here's what no one tells you about healing from parentification. You don't become someone new. You excavate who you always were, buried under layers of other people's needs. That kid who liked painting before they became too busy managing mom's depression, they're still in there. The one who wanted to play soccer before it became more important to be home monitoring the emotional temperature, still waiting. The healing isn't about becoming. It's about uncovering. You were never meant to be anyone's emotional support animal. You were meant to skin your knees and make mistakes and be loved anyway. You were meant to be selfish sometimes, to want things that didn't benefit anyone but you, to take up space without apology. That theft can't be undone, but you can stop participating in your own robbery. The revolution starts with the radical act of considering your own needs without immediately dismissing them. It continues with every boundary you hold, every no you don't apologize for, every time you choose yourself without calling it selfish. You become living proof that love doesn't require you to disappear. Your healing is a beacon for every parentified child still trapped in the economy of emotional transaction, showing them that another way exists. You are not responsible for the childhood you lost, but you're the only one who can give yourself the freedom you deserve. The little kid who tried so hard to hold everything together, they can finally rest. You've got this now. You always have.